Welcome, SpewTubers, to my home. Um, this is a video that I've been thinking about doing for a long time, and it's something I promised my father I'd do before he died. And that's publish his book. Fascinating things, cameras. So I'm publishing his book, and I'm doing it online. I promised my father, I promised him, he was retired, so it was at least, he died died 2002. So he's been gone a while, and I promised him he'd finished writing this. But let's have a look. I've never looked, I've never read it. I copied it. This is my work. This is something I did. I copied this. This is my work. I've never read it. The years between 1933 and 1946. It's my father's book. In his army book. Yeah, I've got a bird chewing on my camera. Go away. Don't chew on that. It's your features. See that? On there. Oh, where's the other one? Soldier's Service and Paybook. Yeah. Army Book 64. See that? Can you see it? Army Paybook. This is my dad was in the army, the British Army. Joined in 1936. Lied about his age. Army number 847916. Surname Manley, Manley. Christian name Gerald. My second name's Gerald. Date of birth 7th of July 1917. Now that's a lie. I know that for a fact. He was born on 7th of July 1919, and he only told me. He didn't tell anybody else. I'm sure he told my mother. I don't know. I don't really care. I do know that he lied about his age to get in the army because his stepfather was an absolute asshole and beat the crap out of him and his mother. So my dad decided to join the army in 1936. Trade on enlistment. I can't read that. Errand boy. Errand lad. Religious denomination, Church of England. No member. Number. No approved society. Enlisted at Liverpool, 19 July 1935. There you go. Regular army. For 6 years. With the colours, and 6 years in the reserve. Didn't sign it. Height 5 foot 5.5 inches, so he had a bit of growing to do. 115 pounds. 34.5 inches chest size. Complexion fresh. Eyes brown, hair black. Distinctive marks and minor defects. Scar back left wrist, mole left side, birthmark left side, middle of back. Yeah? Fascinating. We've got the fucking birds here. Check that out. It's Royal Army Records, heavy AA, conditions and transfer reserved, signed by, or stamped by AS, whatever. So this is my dad's service book. It's empty after that. There's a will in the back. Oh no, here's some more. Enter here the name and address of the person whom you wish to be notified if anything should happen to you. So nearest of kin, Mrs. A. Hazelhurst, mother, Ferndale, Pointerberry Hill. So Manley is the male side of the family. I didn't know that. I don't know who my grandfather was. My father didn't know who his father was. Had no idea. So, you know, I have. It's interesting, Hazelhurst. So she either remarried or I don't know. Interesting. Soldiers service and pay book. Okay. Fascinating. Here we have his regular army certificate of service. So, you see that? Certificate of service. This certificate, if the certificate is lost or mislaid, no duplicate can be obtained. Services Act of 1906. Certificate of service. Again, his army number 847916, Manley, Gerald, Liverpool, enlisted at Liverpool, 19 July 35, Royal Artillery. My father joined the Royal Artillery, I know that for a fact, he was a signalman. What have we got here? Far Eastern Prisoner of War, 1941-1945 Association, London. Life membership number G7559, name Mr. G. Manley. Far Eastern Prisoner of War Association. My old man was a PoW. Certificate of service. Oh. It's falling apart. It's very old. Certificate of service. Oh, my old man said, learned to play an instrument, didn't have to shoot people. So he joined the Royal Artillery, became a signal man, which meant that he just rode around on a motorcycle or a horse. Started with a horse and then became a motorcycle, and sent back information to the officers about what they should do and what they shouldn't do. So he joined the band, didn't have to shoot then, and that got him because he joined the band. He could play any instrument. He could play guitar, piano, ukulele, banjo, ukulele. Anything you could blow through your mouth, he could play. He was an amazing musician. I got my love for music from my old man. I don't have the patience that he had, but I'm a writer, and he wasn't. Home. Royal Artillery, country, home, Hong Kong. 19th of July 35, he left home. 30th September 36, 1 year, 74 days. Hong Kong, 18th of October. Piss off! Bloody birds! God, I love them to death, but Jesus! He just stopped my camera. Sorry, guys, he stopped my camera from going. Birds. Yeah, more intelligent than you fucking realise. Yeah, go outside and play, you little shit. Alice Manley, mother. Name and surname of father. Not there. As you can see, it's not there. I don't know, I didn't know any of my grandparents, none of them. My mother was the youngest of 16 siblings, and her mother died giving birth to her. After 16, I'm not surprised. 16. And I don't know who the fuck she was married to, my grandfather. I don't even know his name. He certainly didn't raise my mother. She was raised by his siblings. They all moved out here too. Certificate of Service. Warning. Soldiers on quitting Her Majesty's service are hereby reminded that the unauthorised communication by them to any other person at any time of any information they may have acquired which might be useful to an enemy in war renders them liable to prosecution under Official Secrets Act. Yeah? My father hated this. He hated politicians. He hated the lot. He moved out here to get away from the war. He moved out here to get away from the fucking horrible weather in the UK. But he never became an Australian. He was proud to be a fucking POM, but he hated the politicians and he hated the war. And there's a reason for that. Wars kill. Any person finding this certificate is requested to forward it in an unstamped envelope to the Under Secretary of State, the War Office, London, SW1. Should I send it back to him? Eh? Should I? Or should I tell him to fuck off? Yeah, I think I might tell him to fuck off. Gerald Manley. There's his rank. BDR. BDR? Bombardier. Discharged from RATA. I don't know what that means. RASTA. Royal Army Surgical Corps. I don't know. Something like that. Enlisted. Yeah, this makes no sense. Particulars which follow refer only to the engagement from which he is now being discharged. Oh, yeah. Alright. Enlisted at King Standing, 13th of July 48. Territorial Army, 4 years, 277 days. Date of birth 1917. It was 1919, guys. You couldn't tell him 1919 in the end, otherwise he would have lost his pension. Right-wing fucking assholes. Winston Churchill said he didn't work out till he was 60 that no one was thinking about him. 60! What a dickhead, what an idiot. Nobody's thinking about you. Take my word for it. He spent till now to work it out. I worked it out when I was a teenager. He was as bad as Adolf Hitler. Winston Churchill. Used the Greek resistance fighters against the Nazis for 5 years and then turned them over to the fucking communists after the end of the war. Yeah, right. Not to the communists, sorry. To the fucking people that helped the Nazis. Because they were communists. Yeah, fuck off. POMs. The years between 1933 and 1946. G. Manley. So Dad started writing this. Today's date is October 12th, as they say, the year of our Lord, 1986. After much nagging from my wife, I've decided to have a go at writing about my life and about the time I spent in the British Royal Regiment of Artillery. At the time I spent as prisoner of war with the Japanese. The story begins at the time of my enlistment. Okay, I'm reading it. At Liverpool, England, July 19th, 1935, and ends with my discharge, 14th of May 1946. This being 10 years, 348 days in the regular army. In the regular army. Enlisted at Liverpool, as I mentioned, 1935, Information Army Book 64, Part 1, better known to one and all soldiers' Bible as the Soldier's Bible. Shows that my trade on enlistment was that of an errand boy. My date of birth is shown as July 7th, 1917, but my correct, July 7th, 1919, but more on that later. My regimental number was 847916. Rank was gunner, and my religion as Church of England. 5'5.5". 115. Yeah, we've gone through that. Scar on back of left wrist. Mole. Yeah. Ponsbury Hill, Salop, and it's dated 1st of August 45. The AB-64 also shows that I signed on for 6 years in the colours and a further 6 years with the reserve. If this story is ever published, I will have my AB-64 incorporated in it, as I know that it will be of interest to readers, if only to show the rules and regulations that the British soldier had to put up with way back in the middle of the 1930s. The breakdown of my 10 years and 348 days is taken from another Army book, my discharge book, or in Army language, Army Form B1, serial number 5/692. This particular book, if ever lost, there is no way would it be replaced. This book I will also incorporate into this story, well back to my discharge book, and break down time. It goes through the times. That crap. This information was signed by D. Hughes, Colonel R.A., HAA Records Office. Chapter 1. I do not remember a great deal about a very early life, and in any case, about my very early life, it is not relevant to this story. I have decided to start when I was 14 years of age. My father had died from war wounds, there you go, from the First World War in 1919, just after I was born. My mother then married a merchant seaman by the name of Hodgson when I was about 8 years old. He was a widower and had 4 children in the Church of England home in Liverpool. There were 3 boys and a girl, and when Mum married Harry Hodgson, she took them out of the home, and I found myself with a stepfather. 3 stepbrothers and a stepsister. We all grew up as a family, and to me they were always my brothers and sister. My stepfather was a very kind man and treated me no different from his own children. My mother and my stepfather had 4 children. Well, there you go. I thought that my father had an asshole of a stepfather, but he didn't. My mother and my stepfather had 4 children first, a daughter Alice, a son George, or better known as Judy, and as Juddy, and then twin boys. I'm a twin. Just one of them died at birth. 36, 24th of December 41. 5 years, 85 days. Far East POW, 25th December 41, captured on Christmas Day. 1 October 45. 3 years, 281 days as a POW. Yeah, hello. Yeah, this makes me sad too. Far East, 2nd of October 45 to 30th of October 45, 29 days. Home for 195 days. Don't pull on that. 31st of October 1945, 13th of May 1946, 195 days. He would have been in rehabilitation at that stage, recovering from the POW camp. So 10 years, 299 days. That 10 years is important. That meant a lot for his retirement, a lot. He worked his ass off all his life, and he gave his life to the army. He never really did have a retirement. Yeah, some pages. He didn't want to retire, but the money was there. At last he had some money. He never had money until he retired. Final assessments of conduct and character. Testimonial. I'm going to have to go. I'm going to have to get onto that. Piss off, fucking cockatoos. Discharged in Rugby, 15th of April 1946. So discharged from the army then. As you can see, this is pretty diabolical. It's old. I didn't even know this existed, and my sister gave me this not long ago. My older sister travelled out here with my parents to escape the warmongers of Europe after the war. Certificate. Oh, it's his birth certificate. It's my dad's birth certificate. Oh. Who grew up as a handicapped boy, and his name was Kenny. So I found myself now with a half-sister and 2 half-brothers, as well as my 3 step-brothers and a step-sister. But here again we all grow up as one family. I left school when I was 14 years of age and went to work at the Cooperative Wholesale Society, a big chain of grocery shops, as an errand lad. My stepfather worked at the local gas works, but was not a well man, and at his death in the late 1934, things at home did not seem the same. Not long after my stepfather's death, my 2 eldest stepbrother Harry and Jackie decided, as things were rather tough as regards to work, they would join the army, as they said they would get 3 square meals a day and get paid for it. Jackie joined the infantry, the Cheshires, and was stationed at can't read that, Manchester Barracks, and Jackie joined Jackie joined the Royal Regiment of Artillery and was stationed at Woolwich Barracks near London. So it wasn't Jackie, it was the other one. Harry. Life at home, as mentioned, became very quiet. I'm reading it. Let's try this. Let's give you some. Of that. I don't know if you can read it. Doesn't really matter. And Harry and Jackie left home, became quieter. When they came home, certainly livened up. What with Harry all dressed up in his infantry uniform, white belt, sparkling buttons, very smartly dressed uniform, and what appeared to me an endless supply of money, even though he was only getting 14 shillings a week. That going back a bit, isn't it? But he still seemed to have plenty to throw around. When Jackie came home on leave, he wore the very smart uniform of the Royal Artillery, peaked cap, smart tunics with white lanyard hanging from his shoulder and tucked into the top pocket, very fancy riding breeches. Not the regulation issue, but privately bought riding whip and highly polished spurs that jingled as he walked. Also non-regulation issue, and again, like Harry, seemed to have plenty of money to spend, and again I must say how smart he looked. Also, when on leave, both Harry and Jackie never seemed sort of girlfriends. I can only remember once when they were both home on leave at the same time, and what place was then. They used to take Mum up to the local pub for a drink, and I know that she was very proud of both of them. I used to talk to Brother Jack about life in the army, and I remember the tales he used to tell me of the great time he was having. Plenty of food, sports, girls, and plenty of money. Jackie had always been a bit of a larrikin, even before he joined the army, and it followed him through the whole of his army career, and even after he left the army when the war finished in 45, and he went to South Africa to fight the PoW, from where he was sent home to the military hospital in Middlesex, where he eventually died from his wounds. More on Jackie later in the story. Jack could see that I was fed up at home and suggested to me that I join the Royal Artillery as a boy. The RA enlisted boys in the army in those days as trumpeters and buglers, and also to train as band boys. Jack was home on leave, as mentioned, and a couple of days after talking to me, he went back to his depot at Shrapnel Barracks, Woolwich. July 35 came round and I was approaching my 16th birthday. Jackie arrived home, again on leave, but this turned out to be his overseas posting leave, and he was being sent to Malta. Boy, was he ever happy. He asked me if I had done anything about joining up, and I told him that I had given it a lot of thought, but hadn't done anything to date. Jackie went to stay a few days of his leave with some friend of his, And while he was away, I did give it a lot of thought to going and joining the army. Then came my 16th birthday, July 7th, and I decided to take the plunge and join up. A few days after my birthday, it being Saturday, I caught the ferry from New Brighton over to Liverpool and found my way to the recruiting office up in the town. I went inside and sat in the waiting room feeling very nervous, and eventually I found myself being interviewed by a very tall and fearsome looking sergeant from one of the Scottish regiments, complete with kilt, I might add. I told him that I wanted to join the Royal Artillery as a boy, and he asked me how old I was. I told him that I was 16, and he then told me that as I had turned the age of 16, I was too old to join as a boy. If I had been even one day short of 16, I could have joined up as a band boy. To say that I was disappointed would have been putting it mildly. So back home I went. Jack came back from his friend's place to spend his last few days of his leave at home, and I told him what had happened. He then told me that if I really did want to join up, to go back and try again, this time enlist as a man, and tell them that I was 18. As the RA were always looking for small men and lightweight men to train as horse drivers, as the guns and wagons were all pulled by horses way back in those days, and he was certain that I would be accepted because I was so small and light. Jackie went back off leave, and following Saturday morning, I went again, not saying a word to Mum. I didn't think there was any possible chance of passing myself off as a man, but back to the same recruiting officer. Believe me or not, I was interviewed by the same recruiting sergeant I had on my first visit, and I now gave myself no chance of getting away with trying to pass myself off as a man. I told him the same story, that I wanted to join the RA as a man, but so help me Bob, whether you recognise me or not, I will never know. I filled in the necessary forms, had my medical, entered my birthday on the form as 7th of July 1917. I did not have to produce any proof of age, and in fact I did not even have to prove that I was who I said I was. If one was and could read and write, you were in the army. By 2 o'clock that Saturday afternoon, I found myself sworn in as a soldier in His Majesty's Royal Regiment of Artillery with a railway warrant for the following Thursday to take me to Woolwich railway station. I had signed on for 6 years with the colours and 6 years with the Army Reserve. So starts my story under the heading Home, 19th July 1935 to 30th September 1936. 1 year and 14 days. It was with much apprehension on my return home I told my mother that I had joined the army, as I was worried that she would say what she would say. I thought that I had been smart in not telling Mum what I had been doing, but I guess that mums are not as silly as we might think. As she told me that she knew that I had been over to the recruiting office in Liverpool, she then told me that it was my life, and if I wanted to join the army, it was entirely up to me. And I had made my bed, and I had to lie in it. She did actually say that. She then asked me how I had been able to get into the army as an 18-year-old. So I told her that I had lied about my age. Mum then told me that if I wanted to change my mind, she would get in touch with the recruiting officer and have me taken out of the army by telling them that I had lied about my age. But I told her not to, as I was very keen on joining the army. Mum then told me that if I ever wanted out, to let her know, and she would get me out. There was many times in the early days in the army, that I nearly took her up on her offer, but now I'm glad that I did not. The following Thursday I found myself on the train from Lime Street station heading for the Woolwich training depot and wondering what I had let myself in for. Here I was, 16 years, facing the next 6 years of my life in the army, and all I knew about it was what my brother had told me. On arriving at Woolwich Station, I was met by an NCO, and I found that there were some other men also going to the depot. I was taken to the tower of the two barracks at Woolwich. There were two depots at Woolwich, which referred to as upper and lower. The lower depot was where the boys in the RA lived and trained in horse riding and trumpet and bugle playing, and of course in drill. There was two boys' bands in the lower depot known as the Black and White, This referred to the colour of the equipment that they wore. All new recruits who joined the RA spent their first few hours at the bottom depot and were fitted out with their first. Oh, lost it. Fitted out with their first issue of army clothing, like underpants, shirts, socks, denim, jackets. See, as you can see, this is what I'm reading. I had no need for civilian clothes for quite some time. We were taken to the regimental barber for our first haircut, and I can remember how short it was, as I thought I was being scalped. I and the others were taken to the... This is a bit difficult to read. It hasn't been open for a long time. I and the others were then taken to the top depot where I stayed for the next 3 months while the army tried to turn me from a civilian into a fully trained soldier. I eventually found myself in a long and cold-looking barrack room occupied by 31 other civilians waiting to be turned into top-class soldiers. I recall that none of us spoke to each other but were looking and wondering, no doubt, like I was, who they were and where they were from. The job of turning us 32 very raw recruits into soldiers was in the hands of a sergeant and a bombardier. My army number allocated to me was 847916. He's a 916. And my Ducati would have something to say about that. And my rank, that of driver. Horse that was. Many was the time we were asked by the instructors and by the officers, what is your number, rank, and name? Something like that. The answers every time was 847916, driver Manley, G sir. And heaven help any recruit who did not answer correctly, as it meant extra duties, cleaning, mucking out the stables. All training squads at the depot were numbered, as they were newly armed. My squad was 11735, 1/17/35. This translated into English meant that I was in the 1st Battery number 17 squad in the year 1935. Being a new squad, we were at the tail end of all the other squads when on parade. And as the front squad, or the first squad on parade, finished, finished their training and passed out as fully fledged soldiers and posted in the regular army unit. Somewhere or other, all the squads moved up one, and a new squad, number 18, would form up behind us. We, of course, eventually found our way to the front squad, but that was 3 months away. 3 months of hard training, physical exercises, PTs as it was known, horse riding, harsh discipline, and plenty of spit and polish. I often found myself coming close to tears and thinking of asking Mum to claim me out of the army. But I just had enough pride to carry on. The boots I had been issued with, 2 pair, referred to by the British soldier as Cossacks, why I never did find out, were very heavy and offered with lots of grease and dubbing, as it was known, the reason for this, dubbing. Known as Cossacks. I might look that up one day and find out why. This was so thick on the boots that they were kept in the army stores for such a long time, and this dubbing stopped the leather from going hard, but this did not stop. This did not help when it came to cleaning them. We were instructed by a sergeant whose name I can't recall at this moment, although after a while we all considered that when he was born his mother and father were definitely not married. On our second day out, our one priority outside of all our other jobs we had to do was to polish these 2 pair of boots until he could see his face in the heels and the toes of both pair. And my old man taught me how to spit and polish. I can spit and polish. What a nasty job. Typical army, what a joke. Being removed from the rest of the boots and being a smile on his face, he informed us that the work had to be done in our own time after our day's work was done. The method of polishing the heel and toe of an army boot was by spit and polish method. The yellow cloth that I had brought out freaking cameras. Working to toe, spit and polish. Back to the boot torture. Also in this work of art on my boots was the use of an old toothbrush handle, an old bone type. After putting on the polish and the spit and rubbing it, I then rubbed the handle of the toothbrush over the boot with the backwards and forwards motion. This of course eventually gave the toe or heel a smooth glossy appearance. This operation was known as boning. So it went on, another boning. So it went on, more polish on the cloth, more spitting on the boot, and more boning with the toothbrush handle, until after many hours, often late into the night, the toes and heel. Alright, hang on. Toes and heel of the pair of boots was smooth and shiny, and I was certain that the squad sergeant could definitely see his face in them, if he so wished. It took me the better part of 4 weeks to get my boots up to the requisite standard to suit the sergeant. Also on each boot was a steel toe cap and a steel heel plate that had to be subbed down with emery paper until smooth. Yeah, and shining, and that was not all. On the bottom of each boot was 24 steel studs that also had to be polished until bright and shiny. Fortunately, these studs had to be polished only on one pair of boots that were used only on special parades, while the other pair were for everyday use. But the final piece of bull was that the instep of the good boots had to be polished as well, because the strap from the spurs we wore whilst riding went under the boot and into the instep, and during inspection, guard mounting, etc., we could be asked to lift up our boots, one at a time of course, to see if the instep was polished. Well, by that time, all our boots had finally been accepted by Squad Sergeant. They really did look great. In fact, I considered mine a bloody work of art, and he could see his face in them. I must admit that both the instructors had a rather big job on their hands. After all, they had been given 32 men from all walks of life, and in those days the army was always a good place to hide. They could be men hiding from the police, getting away from missus and the kids, men like myself fed up being at home, or those who wanted to see the world and get paid for it. And there was those who just wanted to get 3 square meals a day because they could not get work or did not want to work. The job of these instructors was to turn all 32 men into trained soldiers in 3 months, able to obey any word of command without question, and I came to understand the reason for all the spit and polish and all the bull that we had to put up with, because it certainly made me understand that it's not happening. The bull we had to put up with, because it certainly made me understand what the word discipline meant. Like the time we were made to polish the barrack room floor that was made of wood on our hands and knees using tins of brown kiwi polish that we had to buy ourselves, and the reason for this was that the officer commanding Woolwich Depot was having an inspection the following day, hence the hard labour. Fire drill was another way of teaching us discipline. The instructors had a bad habit of having fire drills in the early morning hours, and I could never understand. The fire always had to break out at 2 AM every time we had the fire drill, but then I guess that it was all part of our training. So I've got a bird that's been cantankerous. Sick of me reading, are you? Huh? So that's up to page 8. Page 8, my old man's story. Just joined the army. We'll get back to it. I like what I'm seeing. I like what I'm reading. It's funny. It's interesting. I'm surprised. My old man wanted to be a writer. And this is his writing. He never saw it published. He didn't think it was good enough. I think it was. I think it is. I'm learning. It's funny. My old man being a POW for all those years, never really talked about it. When he did it when he was drunk. Cameras that don't want to function. Goodbye. We'll get back to you.